This conference will now be recorded.
Sorry, JM.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, it's Meta and Microsoft, and know that they're looking to add some stuff to the sustainability section and then get that reviewed and whatnot. So, but
Okay.
Okay, anything else on incubation committee before we talk about work streams?
yeah, just last thing, Eric, I think you saw the deck, but that we can use that for the IC review. It just basically goes over the flow of the white paper.
Right.
Do you
Yeah, I
want to
was
walk
looking
us?
at it. I was
Do you
looking
want to
at it
walk
this
us?
morning.
Sorry. JM, would it be worth presenting that briefly as part of this meeting?
Sure. And now or later, whatever.
Yeah, let's do it now since we're on the topic. You can walk us through it so we can all be reminded of what's in the white paper and how you're talking about it within OCP.
Sure. Do you want to give me access to share, or you can pull it up here?
Oh, sure.
It's on the link I sent.
All right. Hopefully that worked.
Yes. We hope.
Great. Got it.
Okay. Yeah. So again, this deck should be for anybody in the sustainability project to use to when we're talking about the white paper and the other sub projects and other teams. The first slide was just kind of recapping what we said in the beginning of the white paper, which is OCP is a really great platform to talk about sustainability because we have other tenets like openness and efficiency that go along very well with sustainability. And that sustainability is moving beyond just carbon footprint and energy efficiency. There's a ton of other stuff like circularity, interoperability that aren't as well as understood that are impacted in sustainability, and that sustainability is now the fifth tenet of OCP, and that all project contributions must meet it, and basically guiding folks through what we're expecting for the contributions in meaningful, relevant, and data driven. This was the slide to basically just show, hey, this sustainability, although we are a project, it's touching all the other different projects. We have the data center facilities, we have the carbon modeling work stream, we have the stuff that's going on in the storage project, we have the standalone deliverables that happened last year, like the media sanitization white paper, the LCA guide, the design for circularity guide. And then this 4 is just kind of an overview of like what the 3 sections we broke out in the white paper for what sustainability means to OCP. I know sustainability as a word in a broader ESG strategy means lots of different things to different people, but we are trying to define it here in this white paper, like what does sustainability mean to OCP specifically. And the first category was around transparency, reporting metrics. We split that up into 2 sections. One is for data center operators, which really focuses more like on the same idea of companies report scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and how giving some examples about how you do that. And then for suppliers and product manufacturers, life cycle assessments, environmental product declarations, going into what actually makes a good LCA, how companies should report. So that's this whole section of the white paper. And then circularity, we do have a, basically the design for circularity guide is our guide of like, here's some product categories to get folks started on how they could be integrating circularity. Oh, Jordan, yeah, please feel free to come in, jump in here.
Yeah, no, awesome. And thanks also, Jam, too, for getting this across the finish line. I really like this slide, and I'm wondering if a way to even like further strengthen it is not, I know this is how the white paper is organized, so I'm not saying open up the white paper, but maybe even how you frame this slide to also map in how the sub work streams like hit on any one of these topics, just to like kind of further strengthen the narrative and how the project's organizing ourselves. Because when I see this slide, I immediately think of like, okay, so what are some of the bodies of work, and there's the existing work, but it's also how we plan to organize in the future.
Yeah, this may be a good comment. So maybe we could rework this slide to basically have all the active sustainability projects, kind of pointing to the categories or something, or kind of thinking out loud here.
I'll throw just a slight piece of feedback. I hadn't seen this framing yet. Just, those of you who've worked with me in the past, like, I kind of always wonder when we say sustainability and we don't talk about lowering carbon, whether we're missing the spirit, right? Now it's hard, and I get that maybe it's complex for sitting in OCP. These are the means to the end, but we're not necessarily talking about the end goal here of lowering or, at least maintaining and not increasing carbon output. Or so that's just always the thing that comes to my mind when we only talk about reporting and metrics, but we don't talk about, reductions.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, Scott. In the very first introduction paragraph, we say something about just lowering your environmental impact as being less bad, but OCP wants to be more good. We want to actually reduce carbon reduction, taking things out of the atmosphere. But I think as far as what we can impact through the OCP scope, open to interested. If we want to, again, this is all community stuff here for the OCP Sustainability Project. So please leave comments in this document. Leave comments in my paper if you have not.
So let me see if I understand. I'm a little slow. We are talking about the difference between lowering the emission of carbon and reducing the carbon in the atmosphere here.
That's probably one of the main pillars of sustainability. Yeah. I mean, or saving environments or reducing water or ecosystems, I would think would be or environments and ecosystems are the same. So water, ecosystems, and carbon in the atmosphere, I think, are the main pillars of sustainability.
And from the OCP point of view, do we think that we actually have, I'm asking, I'm not, do we think that we really have an opportunity to actually remove the carbon from the atmosphere from an OCP point of view?
I think we're getting very specific here in terms of carbon removal. I think the idea is that we should be advancing technologies that lower carbon impacts. So we don't need to exclude carbon capture, but I don't think that we're probably likely to have much to say on that topic in OCP. But we should always.
But even carbon capture is a tricky definition because you can capture carbon out of your emissions, or you can capture carbon out of the atmosphere. So carbon capture out of your emissions for your diesel generators is something that probably we can do. Remove carbon from the atmosphere after that has been emitted, I think that it's my humble opinion is out of the scope of the OCP.
I agree with you on both counts. I think it's probably most useful for us to think about carbon impacts without getting specific about it includes this and not that.
I think about some of this is like we could do all of this and have no impact on global warming. So that's why I'm like, should we actually explicitly call out like an intention, at least at this point, to have an impact on the global warming? Because you could do all this and have impacts.
Yeah, if you remember, the original white paper we had was a little bit more deliberate about that. It was like going through the IPCC stuff and saying, this is the OCP response to climate action. But this white paper is more of just like, what does sustainability mean to OCP? So again,
well,
I think right now it's more about reporting, right?
You're absolutely right, JM. The first white paper we ever released as a strategic initiative was the call to action on climate, essentially for OCP. This one was specifically a reaction to, okay, we just released the tenets, I believe, at the summit, and we wanted to provide additional guidance on what are ways that contributions can demonstrate that they're sort of meeting it. So I think like we wanted to follow a crawl, walk, run approach by focusing primarily on transparency, not performance targets, just because everyone is at a different place. I think ideally we'd love to see improvements over time, but that's sort of, I think, the next phase. So I totally agree, like we should stand for something, and we want to move the needle. We don't want to become just another reporting framework, blah, 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 blah. There's plenty of those out there. But I don't want us to conflate sort of what the intent of this white paper that JM's been helping to drive versus like, if we want to come out with another sort of strategy paper, I think that's a slightly different deliverable.
I think that was well described. So we can separate the outcomes that we're interested in from the levers that we have to pull in the areas of practical focus. So outcomes that we're interested in, absolutely climate impact. And you can see that, I mean, transparency and reporting, circularity, efficiency, they all have climate impacts. So we could include a separate slide that talks about outcomes, but these are the practical areas of technological innovation that we're focused on.
I love the crawl, walk, run vision. I think that'd be a powerful statement if we could find a way there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ari, how I think about that is some of these companies making the commitments, right, for net zero, this going net zero for scope 1 and scope 2 versus going in scope 3 across the entire value chain. What does that actually mean when we can do carbon accounting for circular business models and bring it all the way back to like the impact for these companies that are reporting it, and like data centers are reporting it accurately, products are reporting it accurately, companies are reporting it accurately. There is a vision for understanding this whole carbon in the value chain, but yeah, we're not there yet, especially on the product side.
I think that there are two parts. I mean, this is a great start. I think the focus in general is, if you look at the industry, they're doing a pretty good job of scope 2 in general, right? What we need to do is to make sure there is transparency and there is uniformity in reporting. All the work streams have an element of that transparency and uniformity that we are trying to enforce, right? And the part that's the hardest for the entire industry is scope 3. And it's focusing on circularity in the middle. That's a great way to push on some of that scope 3, because I mean, like as a vendor, I have no idea how my product is going to get used. So if you ask me what's my downstream scope 3, it's a hard answer, right? Because it's not under your control. So helping folks with scope 3 is going to be a tremendous value, both upstream and downstream, that we can bring here. Right. We don't, I mean, but just in transparency and making sure there is uniformity, there is enough work for us, and that's kind of where we are focused on for the majority of this year, at least all the way to July. But we should definitely make going beyond that a charter.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mohan, you bring that up. Is like, should we, for the things that are frameworks out there, like, for instance, like the life cycle assessment, ISO 14040, like it's what's out there, what people use. But one of the things, like we found out during last year's circular, circularity impact, was that they don't account for circular business models very well. It's like it was a very linear economy thing when
Exactly.
that was developed. And like you just said, different customers have different downstream scope 3 because they have different energy mixes of renewable, and large hyperscalers, for instance, most of them are moving to renewable energy. So why would your scope 3, be associated? But so we should be asking the question is, are there frameworks out there that we should be completely trying to recreate in OCP? Is that too ambitious? Or, right now, again, this is what does sustainability mean to OCP today? This is kind of what the white paper captured of, like, here's the things that the OCP sustainability project is working on today versus what is our long-term vision and goal.
Exactly. I mean, in this one slide, I think that it's representing at least like 2 years of work in here, if you ask me. But we all need to sign up for those 2 years of work to get the industry there. Right. You're right. Not all of this may be exactly in scope for OCP, but we need to go find the partners, and we're happy to do that. We can go talk to the other organization, whether it's Green Grid or iMasons or whoever it is, and partner with other folks to make this happen.
Yeah.
Redfish.
It's rather a good segue to the rest of the agenda today, actually, because we have these 3 work streams defined for 2023 that Mohan helped to establish. And they are advancing practical areas, again, of technical innovation that lead to those broader outcomes. And then if we have time, I also have a presentation on scope 3 more broadly and how OCP is partnering with iMasons to kind of fill different parts of that mission. But before we do that, we can finish going through this deck.
Yeah, the rest of the slides are just summary of the sections. Like for the
Okay.
transparency reporting metrics section, we have one on data center operators, we have one on equipment and LCAs. We go into the design for circularity guide and we give a bunch of practical examples of what products can do to be more circular, go into definitions of like repair, refurbishment, remanufacture, reuse, all that stuff. So, and then the efficiency stuff, this is where we probably need to be a little bit more, you know, I felt like we needed to put the efficiency section in there because of what I saw at OCP, you know, Global Summit last year. We saw a bunch of, you know, presentations, even in the keynote, that are saying my products are more sustainable than your products, and they were really talking about energy efficiency. And we just saw the word sustainability being used where they really should have been using the word efficiency a lot of times. And so that was something we highlighted in the white paper, and we just like, don't do this, please. Sustainability is not efficiency. It's one part of sustainability strategy, but it's not the entire thing. So we gave some practical examples of how companies may demonstrate that they are being more sustainable when they make the products more efficient. Which again, I think it's going to take a lot of work because a lot of people, they want to do this, they're doing the right thing, but they don't know how to market it. Yeah, and then interoperability, we have lots of good examples of interoperability in OCP, so that's easy. And then I just went over the new work streams, kind of just a summary of what's going on. And then the summary is that, hey, we're here to help. OCP Sustainability Project is here to review the contributions, look at the sustainability sections, make recommendations. And yeah, submissions must be meaningful, relevant, and data-driven. What does that mean? Well, those are fairly obvious to me. In the white paper, we go a little bit deeper. So.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And just to reiterate what JM said, everybody's welcome. This is a community to add comment. So switching to our specific work streams, I don't think we have Scott or Danny on the phone.
Scott's here.
Oh, apologies, sorry. Okay, gotcha. Just looking through the list of names. Scott, do you want to give us an update on carbon modeling?
Yeah, so we are about 60 to 70% through the white paper. We have a meeting to get that 70% feedback milestone done later today. We're still targeting end of the month to have the white paper available for review with this body. So we should probably add it for next meeting here, at least final review kind of thing. So we'll have it prior to that available for comments. That's my goal. Again, we're at 70%, so I'm going to get a little further along before we get those comments in there. And so the team also saw a presentation from Deb, who I think was here, about kind of the complexities of the silicon, fabrication supply chain, and just ensuring we are all appropriately thinking about the problem from the same perspectives, and that's the status there. And then from the white paper complete, again on track, we will move on to the API specification once we have all the feedback in the white paper.
That's great. Sounds like impressive progress. Anything else from anybody else? Questions or comments on the carbon modeling workstream?
You said the goal is 70% for the white paper by the end of the month?
No, 100%. 70% a day. I think I've been looking at it. We're almost there. There's a couple sections missing, but they're low priorities, and so we might just cut those. And right now we've prioritized within the team as the biggest impact being the IC supply chain, integrated circuit supply chain, and then we'll tackle the other ones as we have availability. So we're pretty close to the IC section is mostly done, and the storage section is pretty good. And then there's some other sections that we haven't really tackled yet, and we may just deprioritize those for this version, since that was from the get-go a lower priority, like networking.
I see Ari is on the call from Seagate. Ari, you should take a look at this section. They had some stuff about hard drives in this white paper about how we're gonna do some carbon modeling on there, and I know you guys have some good LCAs.
Yeah, I'll take a look. Thank you.
I'll drop
I
the
mean,
link.
it is an area that we're looking at closely, and we would actually like to say a year out, have some kind of carbon credit that can be linked to circularity for drives that are resold. But again, we're at least a year out from that.
Okay, that might be a little bit out of scope what we're talking about, but I think it's a great idea. And I'll add a section to maybe make sure we're retaining like future ideas. So.
Yeah, it's got the biggest thing I see in storage is that people like to take different storage media and look at the carbon impact and compare across the two, which have different like latency and different costs. Like you can't just compare the carbon impact of a hard drive versus an SSD. They're different use cases, different products. Yes, they both store data, just like you can't compare memory and storage. They're different use cases. This is the one thing I see actually most commonly done incorrectly in the sustainability space for storage.
Agree.
Yeah, so let's just make sure we call that out as the intention of the white paper is really scope and capture all these problems so that our implementation of the API explicitly helps, avoid, repeating those problems. I dropped the link for the white paper in to the chat.
Anything else on carbon modeling? Is there anybody on the phone who's been working on the power telemetry work group? Mohan, do you happen to have any updates?
I'm in it.
Group?
Yeah. Eric can talk to it. Eric can talk to it a little bit.
Okay.
About efficiency or power telemetry? Sorry, I just noticed Sammy sitting here too.
Power telemetry.
Power telemetry first.
So this is Danny's project, Eric.
Oh, yeah. I don't have I don't have a specific update from Danny on that one. I probably
okay.
spoke
We'll wait
more about metrics.
For Danny to give us an update. The next one is metrics. So for that one, we actually have in our agenda carved out some time to dive a little deeper so that Sammy and Mohan can take us through the metrics that they are considering for their list, and we can give some feedback.
Yeah, hey, before we jump in, I think we have Raja from Juniper on, right? So maybe a quick chance to introduce himself and what they plan. I don't know if they're ready for this week, but perhaps another time.
Yeah, maybe a subsequent month we'll get a presentation from Juniper, but certainly, yeah. Raja, if you'd like to introduce yourself and Juniper to the group.
Yep, thank you, Mohan. Yep, so my name is Raja Komula. I work as a distinguished engineer at Juniper Networks. My current focus is on sustainable networking. Right? So people assume that networking works all the time, and that way administrators run networks at 100% speed all the time. Right? So which is not good for sustainability. For example, in the middle of the night, suppose say a data center is not in use, but networking still runs at 100% speed. So do we still want to keep it that way, or do you want to save anything in there? So that's where my research is in. So we are finding various features in our Juniper product where we can conserve power across all aspects of networking, like optics, software, platforms, ASICs, everything, wherever we can, including cooling as well. So I can give a presentation on our work in our next meeting. But this session we still need approval from our legal department on what we can share and what we cannot. So that's the reason I'm waiting for it. But next session I can give a presentation on what our work.
That sounds great. Well, welcome.
And Raj,
thanks for joining us.
Yeah, well, welcome, Raja. And if you in that presentation, if you can kind of confirm or correct some of our baseline assumptions, prior to impact from research like yours, what is the actual power proportionality of the network? We have an opinion, but I don't know how educated it is. It would be helpful to me at least to look at inside that part of the industry data on the baseline from which you're working.
Okay, sure, sounds good. Yeah. So yeah, we have a power Yeah, we created a power profile for our for one of our switches. I can use that as an example and go from
Yeah, thanks, Raja. Welcome, welcome, Juniper.
there. Thank you.
All right, Mohan, do you want to talk metrics?
Yeah, Alex, can you open the share for me so I can?
Oh yeah, apologies.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, you should be good to go.
Alex, how much time did we allocate? I forgot, so I can keep track.
So I had this meeting listed as 60 minutes, but then the invite is for 90. Do folks
Okay.
expect this to be 60 or 90 minutes?
Yeah.
60, honestly.
60, I think it's probably the preference across the board. So yeah, if you, I mean, take up however many of the next 20 minutes you want to, Mohan, and then if I can always move my presentation to next week, to next month.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. We have a joke at Intel. Yeah, architect is somebody who can talk as long as the time permits. So that's why I make sure that ask for my time limit before I jump into. So when John Michael was showing his presentation, I commented that one of the things is we need to be the body that defines the transparency of the measurements and also consistency of the measurements, right? And I just wanted to, first of all, I wanted to talk about the various metrics, and then this is all happening in Sammy's forum. Sammy, jump in
We're looking at
anytime
the
you
wrong. We're looking at the wrong screen, Mohan.
what's happening. Okay, I should put you guys in a different screen so I know what's happening myself. Otherwise, I'm in. Okay, give me 1 second. Oh, I see.
That's better.
Every tool is different. It looks like it does by Windows, so I shared the video window. All right, there we go. So first I wanted to talk about the various metrics that we have that we need to go fine tune, and then a couple of metrics that we may want to go create. I don't think we need to be the keeper of the metrics, but we need to essentially start the work and hand off to somebody else. First one is PUE. Probably everyone in this call knows PUE very well, but I'm going to take you into a deep dive that kind of shows all the caveats on how, if somebody tells you their PUE is 1.5 and somebody else tells you their PUE is 1.2, is 1.2 better than 1.5? And the answer is it depends, and that's really what we need to go fix. And there is a similar metric for water utilization efficiency, and which measures how much water a given data center is using. And again, when you look at this metric when it was defined, uh, when you look at this metric, it was defined at a time when there was no reuse, and then there was no tightening of the metric in terms of how you actually report the numbers. So again, there is both transparency and consistency needed there. Similarly, global warming potential. I don't know if Nishi is on the call. This was the fourth track that we started on measuring global warming potential of chemical fluids that are used in data centers for cooling and other purposes. The problem is folks report this on the basis of global warming potential over 50 years, 100 years. So there are various numbers. So again, if you tell me your global warming potential is 1, I can look at somebody else that says their global warming potential is 100 and say, oh, you're better than the other one. So essentially, it's the number of years it stays in your environment. That's what it's measuring. We can't really compare because there is no consistency. Similar, the CUE is a newer metric. I don't know if it was quite. Eric, you may want to weigh on it because I know you also have a representation in green grade on carbon utilization efficiency. It is in a way PUE couched as carbon, but it also comprehends the carbon intensity of the data center. Like are you using green electricity? What percentage of your electricity is green, and so on. Again, as far as I know, I mean there are data centers that are just outright 100% green, whether they're signing offsets or they truly are green. And then there are folks that are kind of in a mix of carbon-based and green power coming into their data centers. And then if you go in and measure those things, how do you compute this is not something that's well specified. So you can essentially come up with different numbers depending on how you compute those results. So
yeah, I think some of these might be a little too operationally focused.
Yeah.
Mohan, and I'm not. We can try to use the weight of OCP to improve upon that. I think that's a good topic for us to talk about. Maybe separately on these two topics, but WUE and CUE, right? Water utilization kind of defined as liters per kilowatt hour, but that kind of focuses you exclusively on kilowatt hour consumption. So, and carbon is similar, right? Kilograms CO2 to E equivalent per unit of energy. And obviously there's a lot more to your carbon footprint than just your operational energy. So that might actually just be poorly named in terms of it needs a name as limited in scope as it actually is, if that's what we're going to use it for, or we need a different metric.
Right, exactly. I think we can fix the metric, but we don't need to undertake this as our work because otherwise we go in and report. I mean, you see at least in these four that I'm outlining, and by no means a comprehensive list. I'm sure you guys may other stuff. Please feel free to propose that to myself and Alex, and we'll be happy to add it on. You'll find that it's very, very hard. I'm going to take you an example and walk you through how hard it is for you to take two examples, two measurements, and essentially say one is better than the other, right? And then going in towards the future, I want to lay the groundwork. I don't want to steal either Sammy or Raja's thunder. So the next couple of weeks, the next forum when we have, we are working on. So one of the problems with PUE is that it's approaching. A lot of folks are close to 1.1 in the way they report it, right? Like many of the bigger data centers are around 1.1. When we started off, they were at 2.2 were the norm. So when your metric ideal number is 1 and you're pretty much closing in on that 1, you have to question, are we do we need an additional metric to augment whatever PU was delivering for us? So, and that's the infrastructure utilization efficiency. I'm not going to say any more on that. I'll let Sammy talk to it, unless Sammy, you want to say anything now. And the second one, now that Juniper's on the call, is network utilization efficiency, right? Essentially, for the amount of energy spent, the amount of bytes that we move is a useful metric for us to see. And we have done some work on it. Again, I'm going to let Raja and the Juniper team talk to it when they have a chance to present. But we need a metric like this because otherwise, as Raja mentioned, networks going full bore in terms of power, regardless of how much bytes they are moving, how utilized they are, it's really not a good answer from a sustainability standpoint. right? You want it to have like a linear scale, right? More utilization, more power; less utilization, less power. You want to see that to some extent, and we need a metric to essentially measure that. Roger, Sammy, any other comments you want to add before I jump into PUE? Yeah, Cosmo.
No, Mohan, not at this. Yeah.
It's a silly comment, but PUE is universally known and accepted. If we want to push and not perfect by all means, we know that. But if we want to push a new metric through the industry with a new name, it's going to be harder than, for instance, call the new metric PUE 2.0 because you connect it to something that people know. It's just, again, I mean, it's just a thought, but instead of changing the name, we can just update the old name.
Okay, I'm not opposed to it. Now that's Cosmo, that's actually a good segue into the deep dive that I wanted to do for the next 10 minutes, right? So let's just talk about what are the issues that PUE has and what are the opportunities we, the OCP Sustainability Project, have to go fix these things, right? So, and then, yeah, I'm not hung up on the name. I think the concept, what the problem is really what's important, and that we agree on the problem and solution, right? What it gets called. Yeah, we can come up with a subscripted PUE version for the future if that's what makes it more palatable to the industry. So first step is we need to, I mean, again, we can have this conversation on every one of the metrics I talked about, WE, CEV, every one of them, but let me start with PUE, right, which everybody's familiar with. Let me show you how much of a problem it is in terms of how it is measured today. So we don't have a definition of what's your sampling period. How long do you have to sample before you report PUE? There is no specification, and therefore you don't know if they just took one measurement or if they took 1,000 measurements and averaged them. Okay, so which goes to the number of samples. How many samples are you required to take? Again, not called out. So therefore, you could be seeing one sample or 1,000 samples, and those could be spread out over 1 month, or they might have taken exactly one instance and just reporting the PUE on the basis of that. From a specification standpoint, both are equally valid, right? They're not violating any specification from the way that the spec is PUE is defined. So the question is, how do you compare if one person is doing a trailing 12-month PUE and you just go to your data center, take one sample, and publish the numbers
in the dead of winter.
In the middle of winter, exactly. And the other thing is static versus dynamic. So you see this a lot with vendors, like hardware vendors. Hardware vendors, essentially, like especially folks that produce thermal solutions, if they are there, no disrespect to you, they report spreadsheet-based PUEs. I call them static PUEs because you've never taken a measurement in your life to come up with the numbers, right? You just did a spreadsheet analysis and you're essentially saying, here is the PUE. If you run it, and if these are the conditions of your run, this is what the PUE would be. Versus dynamic PUE, which is what like big data centers like Google or Meta or what they report, right? Like they're running the data centers and they're measuring the power and they're reporting their numbers. So somebody saying static PUE of 1.1 or whatever it is not fair comparison against somebody from Meta saying their PUE is 1.12, right? It's not at all, because you never run it, so you will never get that number, because there is lots of efficiencies that you don't take into account when it's purely a spreadsheet analysis. And the second thing the vendors do is they call everything PUE, but what they're actually reporting is a partial PUE. what I mean by that is that they leave out, for example, in a data center, they leave out the chillers and they take the power that's incoming into a data center hall, and then they just change some thermal equipment and say, okay, here is my improved PUE. I can hit 1.07. Well, can you really? Because you didn't really incorporate the chillers, you didn't incorporate the coefficient of performance of the chillers. Because had you done that, maybe that number would not be as rosy as being presented. So uh, this part is actually very well defined and green grid, but it's just that nobody enforces the reporting to say you are reporting a PPUE, partial PUE, and therefore you should always report it with a subscript as opposed to just calling it PUE. So by calling it PUE, they are doing a disservice to everybody that's doing actual PUE measurement. And working in this industry, lastly, I find that uh, the IT energy is something that folks play with when it comes time to report PUE. Because as you know, number one, IT energy is not constant in a data center. It is usually within a band, and it's usually within a utilization band of a data center, uh, roughly hovering around the 50% mark, right? But you get better PU numbers if you crank up your IT to 100% utilization and report your numbers. Um, so as we get into governments requiring you to report a PUE number and starting to track them, uh, we are gonna we are gonna see folks quote unquote game the system, and we need to essentially make sure that we put some subscripts to make sure that the measurement of the IT energy is transparent and therefore the PUE as it's being measured is fair from the point of reporting. And lastly, so this is the litany of issues that we need to go fix in some sense. Lastly, from here, what do we want to go look at augmenting this with the new metric, as I was saying with the IUE? Again, even with all this, if overall industry has done a tremendously good job, right? So for all my complaints so far, it has been a good metric and it has served the industry well, and it has served the industry in terms of improving their efficiency. But as we get closer to one, we need to look at, is this the metric that we want to stay on, or do we want to come up with a new metric? Again, what we name it, to Cosmo's point, we'll figure out later, right? The second issue is the role of, so when you look at it, so let me just go one step, right? Essentially, PU is defined as ratio of data center energy to IT energy, right? So when you say what is IT energy is just all the computer equipment in there, right? Uh, Servers, storage, networking, all put together. But the problem is there are varying thermal solutions that are coming up to these days. And if you look at those thermal solutions are sometimes moving the the cooling solution within the server or storage or whatever outside. Now you have a huge problem in the way you compute PUE. So if you look at every one of them, right? If you look at any alternative thermal solution today, they'll all tell you they report uh, PUE that it's much better because they're changing the fundamental equation. They're essentially taking the role of server power and moving it out of the equation. So it's no longer a fair comparison to take a thermal solution that's only a fan-based solution and compare it to something that's a immersion-based solution, for example. So we need to define this new metric uh, to comprehend some of the evolution that's happening in the data center field. So overall, to me, this is why I made the comment that we are looking at at least 2 years of work here. I mean, because this is the deep dive into just one of them, and I have other slides I don't think we'll get to because we're at the top of the hour here. But every one of the metrics has these type of uh, issues and nuances, and it is our opportunity to go fix these things for the betterment of the industry. I'll stop here because I don't want to go over since you guys want to stop at 9. And I'll give the last word to Alex.
Thank you, Mohan. This is exciting work and broadly valuable work across the whole industry. So thanks, and thanks for sharing. And thanks everybody for your time. I think we're out of time, so we'll save the rest of the agenda for next month. I'll send out notes from this meeting so that we can review and continue to communicate, and I'll send out a registration link and workshop information. Have a good afternoon, morning, and day. Thanks, bye.
Yeah.